So after listening to all this, the next question, the resultant question would be, is there a place for data vision and strategy? Is there a clear place for professionals to actually lead the way in bringing about what we're calling the data revolution in development? Data has superseded most of our expectations. Now it's available. We have big data, we have machine learning, we have new forms of data flows that lead to the information cycle. So from data to information, and then for us to be able to implement that, we need the transitory knowledge base. So what we're looking at here is, once we interviewed all these people, these professionals in the different countries involved in this project, and our research in literature, what this has told us is that there is a clear place on how to actually use all this data, and even data that has not yet been brought to the fore. What do we mean by this? As society changes into a post industrial society, into a technological, but mainly a virtual environment. So from a physical social environment or industrial environment into a virtual social or industrial environment, what we're looking at is the creation of new modes of data, new modes of information, and even the context within which they occur, which will totally change. We have already experienced this, okay? Till some years ago, we had the .com aspect, and it was quite interesting for some of our students. Maybe this is already old hat, but even when the internet came in, some of the major companies refused to acknowledge its use. Some companies that today control the informational aspect. What's interesting is that beyond that, in terms, for example, because we come from the criminology field, even new types of crime, which has been coming up over the past few days, past few weeks, years, no one would have thought about them over the past years. This is what we do in our research. We think up of new modes of data and how to use that data in the future societies coming to the fore. And this is what this program does. It places a strong emphasis on building the data vision, and from the vision itself, we create a strategy, short, medium, and long-term strategy. Okay, and doing this through the development of the key skills which are required by the sector itself. So the skills being built within this project, within this training, are related to the direct implementation rather than just the theoretical aspect of data implementation, as always is informed by the expert interviews. So what we're looking at here, one of the main aspects is the data comprehension component. What does all this mean? It means that many of the experts, even though they know that new forms of data will be coming up, the main thing they stressed, and now we'll see the different countries, what they gave us in terms of feedback, is that it's not just about viewing data, but understanding that data, understanding the meaning, understanding the lacuna in that data, the missing pieces, the strengths, the weaknesses, and how horrible it may become that data is misinterpreted. It's imperative that the data is used in the context within which it was born, within which it was gathered. Okay, and also the implications of that output on the real world out there. So let's see what Spain said. Out of one of the NGOs in Spain actually said that from all this debate, the main issue is that the understanding comes through the peace of mind that that data makes sense to the people who are going to use it and to society at large. So each user, each data skilled person needs to have that sense of smell. In fact, it's quite interesting that they actually say this and we're quoting it. To smell that the data is actually real data, it actually makes sense in the context within which it was created. And not just take that data naively and quote it without the context within which it has quoted, it has been gathered. That output will result in, could also result in a negative operation. Okay, so as we can see, the UK input for here said, listen, again, do not just take up that data and run with it, but understand it. Okay, which is why W6H was so important. But there's another component which we're really looking into, and that's the visual component. Okay, data needs to be seen to be understood. Okay, the way we in Malta have taken this data component is to actually have our students, have our NGO experts, government experts, to visualize that data in tabular format, in graphical format, in 3D format, but also we have taken it to the immersive format. So we use VR, virtual reality, we use augmented reality, AR, and also mixed reality. So in actual fact, we would build a scenario based on the strategy itself and have the policymakers and decision makers to visualize the data in a more immersed way. However, not everyone has this, and there are other tools, online tools, mobile tools today, all these apps. This is what they're giving us. Imagery, infographics, outputting that in either 2D or 3D modes. So as the Turkish interviewees stated, it's important that this aspect is that the main emphasis should be on the effectivity of the data visualization. So the data needs to be concise and impactful. And again, from the Spanish component, what we see here is that, however, getting there can be a bit difficult because data operators might not visualize how policymakers and decision takers view that same output. So it is imperative that the boundary between the data producers and the data readers, the people who are going to actually use that output, have a familiar scenario, have a familiar modus operandi. So it's important that communication again comes to the fore. Then in another Spanish input was that people are, when I was doing my research way back, my studies, we had a book called basically Statistics for the Uninitiated. Okay. Now, statistics focus on sampling methodology, but again, based on the data you're going to use. We're going to use a full parameter, a full data set. Then you work in different modes rather than a sample which requires statistical measures to be brought in. However, irrespective of whether it's a statistic or it's a parameter, if it's not displayed correctly, that data could be misused or not used at all. Okay, better not use it at all than misuse it. So it is important that whether it's a human carrying out the analysis or it's machine-based learning or a hybrid of both, it's important that at the end of the day, the data, which is the output which is going to be used by the institution, is still readable. Okay, so here I will conclude my section, and now we'll come up to the final section, of this module.